that's an important part for me is owning my, that I'm choosing this. That's an important part of my process when anything is happening. So, like, specifically on the topic of loneliness, which we had touched on, that's an important part of my process. I'm not blaming anybody else for my loneliness. I'm not blaming people leaving or not appreciating me. I need to own that. Okay, I'm making this series of decisions, and this is the result.
I have always had this very analytical approach to understanding reality, and when I was much younger, as a young adult, I was predisposed to just debating constantly and like wanting to get to like rigorous examination of the truth. And I've just learned more and more that that's actually not that's one part of getting to the truth, but there are so many other elements of how to get to the truth. And then what does getting to the truth mean, and like how much does that even matter in many contexts? I think what I care about is understanding people and connecting with people. And I think the connection thing was something I always wanted. I think I didn't have such a strong draw to like wanting to understand people when I was younger. I wanted to persuade people. And so this I don't know when this shifted, and maybe it was a gradual process that accelerated over time, but probably around the time we were becoming friends, I was gradually starting to investigate these things, and that probably accelerated 2 or 3 years into our friendship.
I'm still in, protection mode overall, even though I'm not aware of it. I'm not aware. I'm not like consciously saying I don't cry. It's not. Right. It's not like something like that. It's just subconsciously. That was the process happening because it was this, these steps to take. Of my subconscious to keep me, quote, safe.
So there was like a lack of complete awareness of the sort of process you were so part of you at least was choosing or was putting upon yourself.
Oh, and I wonder, for sure. Yeah.
When did that? Is there a point at which you remember like noticing what you have been doing to your experience of life, and when did that start to shift, and what allowed for that?
The things that I'm most consciously processing are the things that are coming up directly for me in that experience. So, for instance, fear, fear of doing something, whether that's approaching someone to dance, or fear of expressing something, or like some insecurity about that. Also projection. We may talk more about that, because I keep coming into clearer and clearer vision that my primary kind of spiritual process right now, I use that word very, very lightly. Maybe psychological process would be better, or emotional process, is working with projection. And so the dance floor is a rich space for projection, because if my mind is more in on switch, then I might be telling a story about what's happening for this or that other person on the dance floor that either I'm interacting with or not, and instead of just being in the flow and connecting to intuition and being with what is. So in that moment, it was actually super scary and disorienting, because and I felt a lot of shame, because immediately, like, all of these kinds of memories and associations started coming up for me of relationships where I hadn't, really been able to connect with people's feelings in a certain way, ways that I was lacking in true empathy. And so I, immediately started feeling a lot of like shame and guilt about that, and started feeling fear about, okay, how am I going to interact with the world from this new lens? And I actually had the feeling that nobody would want to interact with me anymore.
Okay, we are rolling. Right on. Alex Case, thank you for coming here, my good friend. Really wonderful. Yeah, thanks. Lots of juice to explore in this episode. Excited to be here with you. I wonder if you want to give a little sense of where your life's at right now and what's been going on with you the last few years.
Let's see. Well, currently I am attempting to record my first ever podcast. So that's the immediate moment, which is where I usually like to start. So I'm here in Taipei, Taiwan, where I've lived for several years now, and really enjoying life here. I guess today, most recently, I was spending the whole day with a lot of small children, which is good for me in a number of ways. So I enjoy being part of their process of moving from just being at home to having to be away from their loved ones for a long period of time. And as may come up later on, that was a big part of my early process as well. And let's see, I guess the juiciest part of my life here now is 5 Rhythms ecstatic dance, and so I feel like my deepest kind of friendship connections and kind of my core group of connections and the core growth that I'm doing right now kind of comes back to the dance community and my experiences in dance. So, and yeah, I don't know what to say too much in bio. So things will probably come up over time, or you can pull it out of me.
Right on. Yeah, so you point towards your life currently being about working with kids and finding connection primarily through the dance community. Amazing.
Yeah, those are big parts of it, certainly.
Yeah, working with kids was a big part of my life when I lived in Taiwan quite a few years ago now. And dance has become a massive part of my enjoyment of life and my process of growth. I'm curious about your journey with dance. Like, when did you start enjoying dance? Is that something you've always done? And how has that changed over the years in terms of the kind of dancing you've done, the approach to dance, and like what you get from it?
Yeah, well, I guess it's transformed completely along with my internal landscape, I guess. Yeah, in the past, I identified as a complete non-dancer and was very, very shy to dance, and would only get out on the dance floor drunk and doing I'm sure the most awkward movements possible. And although there's nothing wrong with awkward movement, that's part of the process too. So, and so then, I'll just touch briefly on about 10 years ago, I went through a huge shift in how I experienced the world, kind of a heart-opening experience. That was while I was living in Vietnam, which was the first place that I lived abroad. And then after that experience, as it began to unfold, I started very gradually to explore different parts of my creative self and expressive self. And then I guess maybe about 7 years ago, I found this dance community here, which calls itself, or the event is called Energy Dance Meditation. And it's based on 5 rhythms dance, which was developed by a dancer named Gabrielle Roth as a kind of a way to process feelings and to actually it's a way to experience all kinds of different things. You can just experience joy, or you can process trauma, or wherever you are in the moment that you encounter the dance. And so the music can be from anywhere anywhere around the world, different types of music, but the 5 rhythms that kind of take you through this wave of experience are flowing, so more sort of round movements, staccato movements, so a good practice for moving forward in your life, and then chaos, good practice for really letting go of control as much as possible, which is a challenge for all of us who want to control everything, and then lyrical, which tends to be more relational. So maybe you're dancing more with other people, sometimes waltzy or things like that, although there are no steps that you have to learn, or I would have a big challenge with it. And then the 5th rhythm is stillness. And so that can manifest in seated meditation or laying down savasana. I currently like to experience it mainly as very, very hesitant or shy to express things or to relate in certain ways. Then, it's a place for that. So, okay.
Yeah. No, fantastic, man. Thank you so much. Wonderful overview of the practice of 5 rhythms. And I guess it's this whole realm of similar practices in the ecstatic dance world, some of which have more structure and more framework, and some of which are just a looser version of that.
That's
yeah,
right.
I'm curious.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious. So I obviously know my experience in 5 rhythms and ecstatic dance, and I want to give a brief description of that. And I'm curious how much it maps onto how those processes of transformation work for you. So with me, I think there's a number of different things going on. One is I concretely think about specific issues in my life, and I feel like it's some combination of like painting and acting and imagining almost in a psychedelic realm, but with real visual images and movement, moving through these issues in a way that both allows me to get trapped, kind of stuck emotions out of my body, and concretely works me through untangling specific things that are going on in my life in the same way that journaling and writing and talking to a friend or a therapist does these things. And so so there's like the embodiment and working through emotion, there's the concrete specific untangling, and there's like the artistic creativity, and there's more on top of that as well. But I'm just curious, do you find those specific three things happen to you on the dance floor, or is there something different going on for you?
Let's see. Can you say the three things again?
I guess there's like moving emotion through the body, concretely thinking through things that are happening in my life, and using abstract creative expression as a way of helping with both those processes.
Okay. All right. I just wrote them down or took quick notes there so I can keep track. So the moving emotion most definitely happens. And so in the group as it is currently manifest, there's a lot of space there to express anything that comes up. And, of course, in a safe way, but, for instance, if you really need to yell, you can yell if you, and so sometimes I don't even realize that I just need to release, a big yell. And, how many times or spaces in our world do we have for that? I'm here in an apartment building in Taipei, one of the most densely populated cities in the world. And so, if I scream at the top of my lungs in my apartment, or most other places, it's going to draw not the kind of attention I probably want. But yeah, like there's also releases of sadness and, also explorations of joy. So yeah, definitely move emotion. I guess I would say that I don't tend to approach with the concrete thoughts or intentions, like, okay, here's what I'm working with, and here's how I'm gonna approach it in dance. You mentioned something about sort of, acting, which is interesting. I kind of want to come back to that, but so for me though, it's really more about, as much as possible, just dropping into the moment and trying to move out of my thinking mind as much as possible. And so the more that I'm out of my thinking mind and into my intuitive flow and into empathic space, where I'm better able to, feel and sense what's happening for those around me as well. Usually the more flow the dance seems to have for me, and the more transformation it seems to provide me as well.
Yeah. Maybe I just want to give a little more color to the idea that I'm like processing concrete things. I guess when I do that, it's there is still very much this presence and flow, and it feels very much tied to that. And I'm not going into a dance with like, oh, I'm going to work through this issue, but rather there are things coming up, and memories arise of like interactions, whether they were a week ago or 15 years ago, and of specific like patterns in my relationships. And so I do notice, like, as the emotions work through me, things get triggered and opened up in a way that allows me to work through them on the floor as well.
Okay, yeah, and I guess that makes a lot of sense. That those things sort of become clear to you, or pop up as you're in that process. And I guess for me, the things that I'm most consciously processing are the things that are coming up directly for me in that experience. So, for instance, fear fear of doing something, whether that's approaching someone to dance, or a fear of expressing something, or like some insecurity about that. Also projection. We may talk more about that, because I keep coming into clearer and clearer vision that my primary kind of spiritual process right now, I use that word very, very lightly. Maybe psychological process would be better, or emotional process, is working with projection. And so the dance floor is a rich space for projection, because if my mind is more in on switch, then I might be telling a story about what's happening for this or that other person on the dance floor that either I'm interacting with or not, and instead of just being in the flow and connecting to intuition and being with what is. So
I'm curious, just as like something related to projection, are you aware or well acquainted with the work of Byron Katie at all?
I'm somewhat aware, but I haven't studied.
So, yeah, I've just been dipping into a fair bit in the last.
Is that Byron Katie important to you?
A couple of my housemates are really into her and doing a lot of work with her stuff at the moment. So I've watched maybe 3 of her sessions in the last few weeks, and they're just so powerful in this realm of noticing where we are telling a story that isn't necessarily true. And her process is so simple, and it's so powerful at helping us shift those projections in a way that can stop us coming at people or collapsing away from people, but rather just notice, I'm telling a story about this person, and I'm creating a reality that's making things not work for me, and there's a way of shifting that to get to a different kind of truth. And yeah, I've just been really enjoying dipping into that, and really want to dive further into that at some point in the not too distant future.
Yeah. Telling a story that may be resulting in things not working for us, and and for me, telling a story that doesn't allow me to actually know the other person, to get to know them. Like every time that there's a projection, it's projections can be stubborn. In a way, I feel like I'm in the process of letting go of a desire to kind of hang on to some of my projections, in a way. They're like, particularly in the romantic realm, there's a part of me that kind of likes the projections in a way, Anyway, maybe we'll get into that more later, but
well, yeah, I'm curious about 2 things here, really. Yeah, how are you working with projections on the dance floor? And maybe if you're afraid, are there any specific instances of that you might want to give more detail on?
Okay, well, I guess on the dance floor, I would say that overall, when I am thinking that I shouldn't, I shouldn't engage with someone in a way that I'm intuitively drawn to do. I'm feeling pulled, I'm feeling attracted to, engaging with someone, or maybe supporting someone in a certain way. There's a lot of emotion being expressed on the dance floor. People are processing things, and so often we have a choice. Do we want to give active support to someone who's expressing a lot of emotion, or do we want to give them space? And so usually after the fact, if I investigate with the person, about that feeling, about that, then almost always the intuitive pull was the correct thing. And so now it's like inviting myself to move forward, to trust myself, but then to also remain sensitive, and build sensitivity, continue to build the empathy, to sensing, what's happening for people, so that I can trust my instincts and impulses, but then also I can shift where needed. So
beautiful. Yeah. So I hear a process there of dance having allowed you to notice times where there's like desire for interaction or a draw towards connecting with somebody, and then this other part coming up that's like, whoa, maybe I shouldn't do that for some reason. Like maybe I will make them uncomfortable, or maybe there's for me it's just like I think there's two primary fears. It's like either being rejected or doing something that makes someone else uncomfortable, and that doing could just be like being in their space. And then there's this other thing of like, oh, after the fact, when the dance is over, talking to that person and discussing that interaction pattern and seeing what was actually going on for the other person, and through that learning that very often the initial, maybe almost always, the initial intuition we have is good. And like the more we practice and the more we talk to people and iterate, the more we can be more confident in our ability to navigate that.
Yeah, and for me, that again comes down to is that impulse coming from some kind of like thinking engineering brain standpoint, which is usually not going to result, in an emotional landscape in the right action. Actually, it seems to almost always result in the wrong action for me.
Can you explain a bit more what you mean by engineering brain in this context?
It's like the analytical fix-it brain.
Gotcha.
So
you're like more concretely, should I be doing this? What's the risk metric?
What's the linear route to fix it? A plus B equals C kind of thing, versus dropping into intuition and empathy, and moving in that flow space.
Great. I cut in with that question, and I think I caused you to lose your thread. I don't remember. Not sure if you recall if you were going somewhere else with that before I jumped in.
It's okay. We'll just keep flowing.
Cool. Yeah. Well, there's something you said earlier. I mean, and I guess related to this whole concept of like dance is like moving emotions through and getting to a place of like greater intuition within our bodies, so that we are able to relate in a way where we can be more confident that we can bring connection and empathy. And I guess a question is like, well, it's like a two-part question, I guess. Yeah. How has practicing all this stuff on the dance floor, where has it carried through into your life, and what changes has it made, and what other things have fed into those changes? So yeah, what practices beyond dance do you have, and when you think about how these practices have changed how you go about life, what concretely has changed in the way you build relationships and connect with people and all that kind of thing?
Okay.
So it's just a very concise summary question.
So let me start with the first one.
Yeah.
First one first, and so that was more about like how do these experiences on the dance floor kind of carry into my life, or what's the interplay between the two. And really, that's something that's only been starting to become clear to me recently. And so I'll try my best to give an answer, but it's only really been in the last year or so that I've become aware of. I mean, I've certainly been aware that my dance experience has become more dynamic, but I've only recently started to become more aware of that I'm working on life things in the dance. And so so I guess one example is that through the process of becoming more confident with my intuition and flow in the dance, then I become more confident with my intuition and flow outside of the dance. And so it's easier for me to have difficult conversations with people. It's easier for me to just be authentic with my feelings and needs, and to have really direct conversations with people. And it seems like usually people are responding to that directness in a positive way. So hopefully I'm doing that compassionately. And I think I lost my train of thought there. So
I think what I see in you is a very, very, very skilled ability to navigate relational complexity. Like, you're very good at. Well, we've been friends. Well, it's evolved a lot, I think, as well. We've been friends now for nearly 10 years. And I think, obviously, both of us have grown and changed a lot in that time. But what I've seen in you in recent years is like a great ability to allow people to feel really heard and seen, whatever's going on, and whether that's like difficult relational stuff or just like meeting people and allowing them to feel comfortable to be authentic and to connect. Like you're very, very good at those things. And so I think what you're speaking to is like dance has been a useful tool in that. And I imagine, well, I know there's been a bunch of other things that you've like worked with both recently and further in the past. And yeah, curious to hear more about like what you see as have been fundamental tools in your development there.
Okay. So this is where the storytelling starts to it's like where to catch the thread and where to go. So I guess again, I referenced before this experience that I had approximately 10 years ago, where I had a very sudden shift in the way that I experience and interact with and understand the world, and roughly that shift was from kind of like a very left brain, more rational, analytical orientation to the world, to what always feels right to me to say like a heart-centered orientation. Some people would, go to brain descriptions of that, but and so it's like heart and body. And so there were things that helped me, I think, to get ready for that. But I guess I have to go back to kind of the closing off to the heart and to the feelings in the first place, at least briefly. And so I wasn't consciously aware of this until the experience of the shift. But basically, when I was just a toddler, I had, a very common, this kind of like basic daily separation trauma from my parents when they both needed to be at work. And so apparently at that time, I would just roll through babysitters because I could scream all day long, no problem. And so just whatever the next babysitter was, that was going to be her day. And then one day, as my parents tell the story and makes sense later on, I went from like the most dependent little kid, the most, attached to mom and dad, to the most independent little kid immediately. It was like, just like in a moment, so they started calling me the little lawyer, which eventually I did go to law school, although that's another story. What later became clear to me, what happened in that moment, was that I basically said, okay, well, I can't count on any of the people out here to take care of my feelings, and this hurts too much, so I'm just gonna shut it off because it's too painful. I'm gonna take control. So I don't need all y'all. I'm just gonna do my own thing. And so then after that, we'd be in restaurants or public transportation. I'm walking all around, meeting everybody. Don't need to be with them anymore because I'm kind of writing my own script at that point. And there were other examples, interesting examples after that, of where I took control of my experience by shutting off parts of my sensitivity. When I was 5, I was like having like a fun little tickle fight with my mom and brother, which was actually, we were just having fun. I was raised in a very loving, supportive family. But at some point, I guess I have a kind of a body memory of this. I decided, okay, I want to win. Like, I don't want to be out of control anymore. And so I really tried hard, and I just shut off my tickle response in that moment. And really, honestly, that's one. So to this day, I'm not really ticklish. I can kind of open up to it, kind of make, but I'm not really,
wow.
I'm still not vulnerable on that pathway. So maybe someday I'll open that one up. Or when I was about 11, I shut off my tears. And I have a very clear memory of that. I was in a car with my parents, and I was upset with them about something, and I didn't want them to know that they were impacting me in that way. And so I just choked down the tears, and then I didn't cry for 10 years, other than when my first love came to a dramatic end. So that was strong enough to move through the wall. But and so there was this whole series of moments as in my youth where it's a testament to the power of our egos, really, which are there to help us survive and to protect us. But mine got a very outsized role in my life through all of that, and So I guess what are some of the things that helped me move in the direction of being ready to open? Yeah.
Well, I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious. So you mentioned one thing there, which was perhaps there were 10 years where you didn't cry, and then I'm guessing after that 10 years, something broke through, and then there was like a new way of being in relationship.
It was just going to Schindler's List at the theater.
Wow.
and I completely just fell into a puddle with like people all around me, and it was probably years also. I mean, it was the last scene of Schindler's List, which all of the tears, but probably also the floodgates were all of the tears that I hadn't cried for the previous 10 years as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow, imagine that was a powerful, incredibly powerful moment. I cry all the time, and I've never really had a phase where I wasn't a big crier.
It was a very vulnerable moment for me, and yeah, you said powerful. It was powerful, but it also, like, I can't say that I felt empowered by it. At that time, again, I'm still in protection mode overall, even though I'm not aware of it. I'm not aware. I'm not like consciously saying I don't cry. It's not. Right. It's not like something like that. It's just so when subconsciously, that was the process happening, because it was this, these steps to take of my subconscious to keep me, quote, safe.
So there was like a lack of complete awareness of the sort of process you were so part of you at least was choosing or was putting upon yourself.
And I wonder, for sure.
When did that? Is there a point at which you remember like noticing what you have been doing to your experience of life, and when did that start to shift, and what allowed for that?
Yeah. So I guess there are a couple of things. The primary thing that started to get me ready were experiences that I had through something called process-oriented psychology, or process work. And yeah, I first got introduced to that through a friend who I went to law school with, actually. His name is David Bedrick, and he is an amazing therapist and writer and activist now, doing wonderful work. But somehow we both found ourselves in law school together. Him through a desire to help protect children in the legal process, and me through a desire to help protect ecosystems through the legal process. And so we both explored that for a bit, and then both exited. But so yeah, I first met him through my ex-wife, because they started in the evening program together, and I remember her talking about that. He would always comment on her boxing glove keychain, and he would make observations about it, or ask questions about it that I think she found intriguing, but also slightly vulnerable for herself. And so, but anyhow, they became friends. And then I guess really my first deepening connections with him were through doing therapy with him. So at times when I experienced some depression, or feelings of depression. I went and worked with him, and the way that he worked with people was so different from other approaches that I might have been aware of, and
What was unique about his approach?
Well, again, it relates to the process work or process-oriented psychology, which is kind of an offshoot of Jungian psychology that was developed by a man named Arnold Mindell, who is still with us today and still doing great work. But rather than just relating with people through like talk therapy, it really engages all of the different ways that we engage with the world. So movement, a lot of role play, all different types of expression, and so the role play aspect really is very helpful in moving through things, and also that with permission, of course, and consent, doing body work. So I remember one time, one of the first times that I worked with David, I was talking about feeling this weight on my shoulders or weight on my chest, and heart, not being able to breathe as deeply as I wanted to in this depression. And so he asked for permission to like press down on my chest, and until the point where okay, how does it feel? And then in that moment to be interacting with this force in a different way, and then to switch up, and then for me to be the one that's pushing down. And so what is the motivation of that force that's pushing down? What is and how can I have a conversation with it? And what is it that wants to come forth? And so it's one thing to talk about that, and every time we use words, we're running through our left brain, and so it's a different thing to dance it or to experience it in that way. And so I also did some dream work with a group that he did that was really super dynamic. And I was a mediator for about 8 years after my little dalliance with law practice. The mediation was a better fit, and so I'll tell a little story because, well, anyway, as part of that, as part of our mediation group, we did this series of workshops with a man named Steven Skadeverder, who is also a process-oriented psychologist, and during one of those workshops, as people were sharing things around the circle, someone that I did not know was on the other side of the room from me and was sharing something very tender about an experience she had with her father. And in that moment, she was feeling like that it hadn't really been kind of held in the way that she wanted it or needed it to be held. And so, and in that moment, I felt like I was just like right with her. And so there was that was I guess my first moment of experiencing deep empathy with someone, almost like we were sharing a process from across the room, where she viscerally felt supported by me in that moment. I felt like I understood what was happening for her, and it was very profound for me, certainly, and also for her. And I checked it out. We checked it out, later, kind of what had happened. And so that was, I guess, that was the first moment that I'm aware of where, I really kind of moved out of my thinking mind in an environment that normally my thinking mind is can be very stimulated. And then I had, before I moved abroad, I guess back in 2011, I did a month-long intensive at the Process Work Center in Portland. And I know I've been talking for a while, so I'm going to stop soon. But through that, we had these group processes where we would be working on some kind of issue that was like hot for the group or hot for society, and we were kind of each taking different roles in kind of working on the process or working on the conflict. And then in a couple of those experiences, again, I had this experience of moving out of my thinking mind and just like into flow, into intuition, into just knowing. So there was a quality of just knowing what the right thing to do was, and just doing it and not thinking about it, not analyzing it, and so through some of these experiences with process work, then I just became aware, okay, there's something else. There's a different way to experience the world. There's a different way to experience life. But at that time, I had only had those experiences through process work. And so it wasn't until I had this heart-opening experience, and then the things following that I was able to start to have these experiences more. I'm going to stop talking for a moment, give you a chance, and then there are a couple other things that I could add. But
yeah, great.
I'm going to zip it.
Yeah. So it sounds like you had a bunch of practices, maybe kind of all to do with cultivating a different way of relating to your experience and understanding yourself in realms you just hadn't even known existed before this process started. And so there was the process work with David Bendrick, and the body work, and the month-long intensive in Portland. And through these practices, cultivating an awareness that just wasn't accessed before. And none of these practices are specifically ones I have dived into much at all. So I would really like to get like specific links for those and share those with listeners and dig into them myself. But they echo a bunch of things I have worked with over the years, and I think which have been about noticing my experience in a different way. I think that I hear echoes of like internal family systems and capital F focusing, the Gendlin modality. And I guess for me, the start was...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess for me, the start was actually just practicing classic Vipassana style meditation, shifted my awareness. It was, for me, that was a route away from being attached to thought, in like, I can see thought from a different perspective, and simultaneously I'm really observing my bodily sensations in a different way. And while that it's almost quite a passive process in some ways, because it's not about like changing anything, and it's not about interacting with my bodily sensations as much as observing. And so there's I think it's kind of supportive of these kind of practices of body work and focusing. With focusing, you notice sensations, and then you have very direct conversations with them in ways which actually echo what I get from dance, and maybe that's something that's fed into my dance practice. This idea of this way of being, which is like noticing, feeling, and concretely working through things in my life through interaction with bodily feelings. And so, yeah, I hear you having all these experiences. And then there was this breakthrough which we haven't explicitly named yet. So I'm curious to get to that in a second. There was like something momentous happened. So, yeah, these practices led to this. Well, I just want to also name that I'm really curious to dig more in the later part of this conversation into how this self-transformation had, well, maybe this speaks to perhaps what you're about to name as well, like how it's changed how you go about finding connection and making connection in the world. But absolutely go where you were going with perhaps the big break. What was this big breakthrough you speak towards, and what happened there?
Okay. Well, yeah, that was in the context of a big relationship conflict point. And so I had moved abroad with my partner at the time, and we had kind of charted out a joint vision for our future, which involved marriage and children, and going back to the States together. And we had some kind of points of reckoning or process about those things in the past. I think we weren't necessarily in the past 100% aligned on it, but we had come to agreement on this, and this was the direction that we were going. And then at some point in the time that when we first, were first living and working in Vietnam, she confronted me with, kind of a sense that it didn't seem like I was aligned with this vision that we had charted for ourselves. And so in that moment of conflict, I suddenly became kind of like face to face, like looking in a mirror, really, and seeing that I was actually lying to myself about something. I was lying to myself about what I wanted for my future. And so that was like the first key moment that during like a 12-hour span that where the big shift happened. So that was the first key was, oh my God, I'm lying to myself. Why the fuck would I do that? like it's bad enough to deceive someone else, not my intention in life, but why would I want to deceive myself? Okay, so first thing. So then we're living kind of on the side of this mountain overlooking the South China Sea in Vietnam, living in kind of a big tin can basically of a house. And so we go to bed together that night and fall asleep, and I awaken to basically a near-death experience where there was some gigantic explosion. That's how I experienced it. And I woke up hyperventilating, not knowing whether I was alive or dead, and expressing myself through this panic in a way that I don't remember ever expressing, because that was not part of who Alex was. Alex did not freak out. Alex did not panic about things, and was more about having control. And so yeah, this panic, I honestly didn't know if I was alive or dead for a few seconds. Okay, finally figure out, okay, I'm alive. Figure out that there had been a lightning strike right next to this, sort of tin can of a house, and basically it acted like a snare drum, and so we're inside the snare drum, and so that was number 2. So I look in the mirror, I'm lying to myself. Number 2, basically near-death experience kind of moment, lose my shit, just, lose my cool. And so then I after I figured out that the house wasn't burning down, tried to go back to sleep, couldn't go back to sleep. And so I started reading the end of this book by Haruki Murakami called Norwegian Wood. So I had been reading all of Murakami's novels during that time, and so was getting very familiar with his characters. And so I don't know if I'm really going to be describing the story of the novel accurately. I'm just going to explain what it was for me. So my experience very quickly of the novel was like 3 children, kind of 2 hearts and 1 head, moving through the world as young people. The head boy, the kind of brain-oriented boy, kind of helping the heart boy and the heart girl to move through life when they needed to kind of interface with the world. And then at high school graduation, the heart boy kind of feels like, well, I can't be in my heart space anymore now, like moving out into the world. So he commits suicide. And so then the rest of the book is kind of like this exploration of the head boy and the heart girl trying to figure out how to interact or how to understand each other, how to reach each other. And so I had kind of felt from early on like it was likely to be, it kind of felt like a suicide watch for the girl. The book felt like that. But then you're almost all the way to the end of the book and she's still alive. And so you're thinking, okay, well, she's not going to kill herself. Okay, this is great. Right at the end of the book.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. And so then the last scene in the book is years later. The head boy, now a man, getting off a plane somewhere, is still trying to like process all of this, but still not able to make the connection. He was never able to make the connection to the heart. And he's still like, just kind of like, I don't know. And so I got so angry. It was dawn at that point, and I'm so angry at Murakami that he waited till the end of the book. So Murakami has, I feel like, a very similar character in a lot of his books. This very like analytical, rational person that's not very connected to feelings, and I guess I had at that point I had kind of associated that person with the author himself. So basically I'm thinking, well, he's kind of writing himself into these books, which I don't know how accurate that is. So at that point, this anger is building. And again, okay, just like I talked about, like the panic the night before being something unusual for me, the anger was something very unusual for me. And so I got out of bed, and went over. In Vietnam, all of the windows have bars on them so that people, don't come in and grab your stuff. And so I go over, I'm holding on to these bars, looking out on the brightening ocean and the wind kind of whipping in, and I'm cursing Murakami. I'm like, how the fuck could you do this? And all, and then in that moment, there was like this whoop, and suddenly I realized that, I'm the head boy, I'm the one that can't connect to feeling, I'm the one who can't connect. And then it suddenly everything became clear. So, the cage that had been around my heart, I think it probably helped that I was holding on to bars while I was having this experience. The bars I was holding on to reflected the bars that I had around my heart. And but in that moment, it was actually super scary and disorienting because and I felt a lot of shame, because immediately, like, all of these kinds of memories and associations started coming up for me of relationships where I hadn't, really been able to connect with people's feelings in a certain way, ways that I was lacking in true empathy. And so I, immediately started feeling a lot of like shame and guilt about that, and started feeling fear about, okay, how am I going to interact with the world from this new lens? And I actually had the feeling that nobody would want to interact with me anymore. And so there was this fear of complete isolation at that moment, because it was all so foreign to me. And also this sense of like anger at my brain, like anger at the part of my brain that had cut myself off from feeling, because kind of that whole process became clear to me in that moment. So I actually, in that moment, I guess I'm lucky that nobody was there to put me in a hospital or something, because I was punching myself in the head for a short time, and then kind of kicking and screaming on the bed, and my partner was like, what in the world is going on here? So all of that, tidy control that I had been imposing on myself was suddenly, blown up. And I knew in that moment, no matter whether I wanted to put the genie back in the bottle, like it wasn't going to be possible. And so luckily, as the heart started leading the way, the war with the head started to subside some, and it became clear to me what I needed to do. Somehow Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now came into my hands, and I wish I knew how it came into my hands. It would be really fun to know that. But I guess there's also an element of the mysteries of the universe and just not even remembering.
There's a lot of poetry in that, because he talks about having this unbelievably like sudden, powerful transformation that led him to be the person that wrote that book as well.
Right. Yeah. He had his dark night of the soul. As I think he sometimes terms it. So through using that book as a guide, I learned how to be in the present moment, because I had never, I had never experienced that before. It was always regret about the past and dread about the future. So, and now with the opportunity to actually experience the present moment. And then parallel with that was learning to identify my feelings, and to listen to them, to work with them. And so I put these little heart messages on mirrors and on computers and everywhere that I could, they're saying like, welcome to the present moment. What do you feel? And
beautiful.
And again, at that point,
I wonder if I can just like summarize a little bit what you said last little while.
Go on.
Yeah. So there was this point in your relationship where your then wife partner was like, I think you're not fully into what we're planning to do with our lives here. And simultaneously you're reading Norwegian Wood, which I actually read as I was going through the breakup of my longest term relationship, and also found it really a great tool for like giving an amplification of all kinds of different feelings, and just like mapping our experience onto others in literature is such an amazing tool for learning and growth, actually. So Norwegian Wood, and then this like random act of nature, like a bolt of lightning struck this metal building you were in, and shocked an explosion both in the real world but within you, that kind of ignited the tinder of this stuff that was happening in your relationship and in the book you were reading. And you found yourself screaming through the bars, and very around that time reading Eckhart Tolle's book, which really just emphasizes this point that we can be present in the moment, and talks about how to integrate kind of what's going on in our bodies within that process of being present. And then you did this thing, which I want to show something on my wall just here, actually. You wrote a bunch of hearts and little messages to remind yourself of this like new thing you were learning, which was to be present. I had this experience a few days ago where I kind of felt the energy of a panther, and it really has been an amazing grounding experience. It was a really powerful experience for me, and it's given me this sort of anchor to a way of being that I am working to have the choice to hold on to. And so I drew a picture of a panther and I stuck it on my wall.
Oh wow! Yeah. Cool! Wow, yeah. Nice work.
I think that. Yeah, thanks, man. I think the picture's pretty primitive, but I think that there's something really useful about like putting things in our vicinity that are reminders to the way that we want to be, and that just putting things on a wall where we're going to see it every day, or on our mirror, or the screensaver on our phone, or like the first thing we look at when we open our laptop in the morning. That's an opportunity to set ourselves in a way that we are choosing to cultivate. And so it sounds like you stuck things on your wall, and that was like a way of reminding yourself of this new angle on how it is to be a human in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And things that I was constantly carrying with me at the time, like my Kindle at that time was kind of an appendage. And so, I had it on the Kindle, had it on all of the places that would catch me. So.
Nice. Yeah, and so there was this powerful transformative experience. I wonder if have you is this kind of the encapsulation of that explosive moment, and then what happened with how did that? Well, I guess we've talked a lot about personal transformation and like personal processes in this conversation, and I'm curious about how that growth edge has affected the way you have relationships in the world.
Yeah, well, actually, I think one of the things that I was interested to at least touch on, that we talked about touching on is our friendship. And so some of this is very, relevant to my early experience of our friendship, and then, later evolution and iterations of our friendship. And so when I first met you, it was, fairly close in time, the first couple of years of trying to integrate this experience. And so at that time, I still had a lot of mistrust, I guess, of my mind, and I guess I'll say my left brain, if we're working there, kind of ego process and analytical, rational mind. And so, and when I first met you, again, my perception of you at that time was that you were primarily processing from that side of things, from the left brain, and that you were curious about feelings and heart and intuition. I always felt like you had a very scientific approach. Like sometimes I felt like you're always like kind of digging in to look for evidence and wanting me to provide evidence for things. And so in a way, like I felt like we were expressing kind of archetypes at that time. Like I was sort of like trying to express my sort of heart archetype and pushing against my mind a little bit. And I felt like my perception was you were sort of expressing the rational archetype, and then, curious about the feelings. But anyway, so there were times when I had like, I always knew that we were supposed to be connecting, but there was also a part of me that had some aversion. Like I was like, God damn it. Like he's always up in his head about stuff. And so, but some of that was just projection on my part too, about this part of myself that, I was still so mistrusting of, and still just in the early stages of like sort of making peace with all of the different aspects of myself. So I'll stop there for a moment. So that's kind of some early stuff.
Yeah, really. I appreciate you sharing, and glad we get a chance to dig into this as we have previously. But I imagine maybe some new things will emerge. Yeah, I felt like over the course of, I guess we've known each other more than 9 years now. Yeah, I just feel like increasingly close with you over the years. And I think that probably speaks towards how we've both become much more adept at empathizing. maybe that's the heart of it. I hear what you're speaking towards there, and I think in myself, I have always had this very analytical approach to understanding reality, and when I was much younger, as a young adult, I was predisposed to just debating constantly and like wanting to get to like rigorous examination of the truth. And I've just learned more and more that that's actually not that's one part of getting to the truth, but there are so many other elements of how to get to the truth. And then what does getting to the truth mean, and like how much does that even matter in many contexts? I think what I care about is understanding people and connecting with people. And I think the connection thing was something I always wanted. I think I didn't have such a strong draw to like wanting to understand people when I was younger. I wanted to persuade people. And so this I don't know when this shifted, and maybe it was a gradual process that accelerated over time, but probably around the time we were becoming friends, I was starting to gradually starting to investigate these things, and that probably accelerated 2 or 3 years into our friendship.
And I feel like we were both we both have been going through processes of integrating just coming from different directions on it. And so now we're gradually, meeting more and more in the middle, or, maybe becoming more, I'm speaking for myself, I'm been working on, an integration of sorts. And so again, not demonizing the parts of my mind that I use to protect myself as a young person, and that are actually very useful for things. And so now I can, it's easier for me to appreciate those aspects of you. And then also now, you have opened up so much to the world of feeling, and or to the aspects of feeling and experiencing the world through other internal channels.
I think through the practices I've been diving into for the last 5 or 6 years, I've just learned that trying as hard, working to understand others and to be grateful for others, whatever they bring. This is like the route to understanding other people fully, and it's so hard. We can't ever fully understand each other. There's too much going on, and we don't have language isn't a powerful enough tool for us to. I'm never going to know what it feels like to be you, and you're never going to know what it feels like to be me. But we can do so much to get so much closer to that, and without being fully in touch 100% with what it is to be you. What am I even arguing against? And what am I? And why am I doing that? And when what I actually want is to live in a world where we love each other and we nourish each other's experience of being, and our own experience of being alive. And of course, we have to navigate the world. Beautiful. And if we want to improve the world, we need to understand it, and we need to get to some truth so that we can decide what to do in the world. But I think there was this fundamental approach to life with me, which was like debate to get to truth and to persuade once I had enough confidence in my own ideas. And that has large. There's a part of that there that still feels valuable, but it's just a part of a huge other landscape, which is understanding others, empathizing with each other's, helping others, working so that others understand that I empathize, and that we can collectively just amplify that feeling of mutual understanding, even in the face of completely differences of belief, even sometimes.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. That's a big challenge, and your reflection about the challenge of really, really understanding what it means to be another person, that also plays into the practice of watching our projections. And so, and I'm just constantly amazed at, even though this has been a big focus of mine for years now, this process of watching projections and catching them early, hopefully catching them before they've had too much. It's just, they just keep coming. I just
projections.
Keep grinding them out, just keep grinding them out, keep throwing them out there. But I do feel like progress is being made, but it's, it feels like a lifelong process. So.
Yeah, maybe like projection is just a fundamental part of being human, but what we can do is learn to see that, learn to catch it, and then we can choose what to do with it. And when we can't even see it and we can't catch it, then we're just beholden to this mechanism that is beyond our control.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, I feel like I don't want to say but like somehow the conversation was a little bit hijacked from like some of the topics that we had talked about around friendship, and so are there any kind of directions that you want to explore here in the time we have?
Yeah, very grateful for like the things that you touched on, and like really important processes in your journey of transformation. And I think what I'm noticing in these conversations generally is often people spend a lot of time talking to that thing, which is their history of growing from who they were to a place that feels like a healthier way of living. And so maybe that just has to be spoken to before we can like fully understand, well, okay, how do I navigate like making connections in the world, and what specific experiences of relationships have I had? And there's a bunch of stuff I was keen to talk on, and maybe that would just have to happen in another conversation, I think, because there's like a bunch of really interesting things around like living abroad, where there are a lot of people who stay for a certain amount of time and leave again, revolving door friendships. Like I've lived in Taiwan 6 times, but each time it's been for 1 year, and I leave and I've made a group of friends, and then I say goodbye, and it's like, oh, how does one navigate that when they live in a place where many of their friends are temporary? And then there was a bunch of other stuff, which I wonder, if we touch on one thing right now, like more specifically related to community and friendship, does anything feel alive in relation to what we've spoken to?
Wow. Yeah, it's hard to know where to go.
How about if I ask something at you? Maybe like revolving door friendships and life in Taiwan. How is your life in Taiwan like? How have you you spoke to in the notes you sent me prior to the conversation about like a couple of different phases of life in Taiwan, and I wonder like what.
I guess speaking to the revolving door friendship aspect, of course, I have some friends who are Taiwanese, and so actually some of them do tend to go on long expeditions or go move abroad. I have some Chinese, but it's not. My Mandarin is not really strong enough to have really deep conversations, and so the people that I'm interacting with tend to be people who have a pretty strong base in English, and so then even they're likely to be on the move. And so there was a time, I think I can remember times, some of the times when you were leaving Taiwan, or when our mutual friend Connor left Taiwan, when I felt a little abandonment, or was feeling a little bit kind of lonely, a little sorry for myself, okay, how do I create a meaningful community, when a lot of the community that I'm creating is in and out. And of course I'm creating that for myself by living in this context, and by choosing the communities that I'm choosing to interact with, by not continuing to become highly fluent in Mandarin at the moment. And so that's an important part for me, is owning my that I'm choosing this. That's an important part of my process when anything is happening. So like specifically on the topic of loneliness, which we had touched on, that's an important part of my process. I'm not blaming anybody else for my loneliness. I'm not blaming people leaving or not appreciating me. I need to own that. Okay, I'm making this series of decisions, and this is the result. And of course, loneliness also relates to my relationship with myself, and so and my comfort in being by myself. But that's a whole other topic. So, let's see. I got off track. Get me back on track.
Yeah. So how has loneliness undulated during your time in Taiwan, and how have you navigated that?
Well, yeah, I think, okay, so yeah, particularly, back at some of those times when a lot of people were leaving, maybe, again, feel a little sorry for myself. I think then during COVID time, like so many other people around the world, I felt pretty isolated for a while. My pottery practice kind of fell away at that time, and that was something that was really important to me, and that I was also connecting to people through that. And the dance was kind of falling away for a while, and actually just the masking itself was also making me feel very separated, whether at school with the kids, or just out on the sidewalks, that separation. And so there was like a sense of isolation. And for the first time in my life, I guess I felt a growing sense of, I guess, what I'll call social anxiety, where I was like really kind of nervous to be around other people. And I remember a dinner in particular where I got together with 3 of my friends out at a restaurant for the first time in a long time, and I almost felt like I didn't know what to do, and so luckily that didn't last for too long. But so I guess to come forward to the present a little bit, what I've done recently is, and I think dance has been very helpful in, again, kind of like helping me to train myself to follow my intuition, follow my deep desires. I'm going out and creating the kinds of connections that I want with people. And so I guess I'm feeling like more and more clear about the kinds of connections that I want. And I'm feeling more bold about being really direct with friends and also potential lovers and romantic partners. That I'm just feeling emboldened right now just to be very, very direct and open with people. And
what does that look like in practice?
Part of that. Sorry.
What does that directness look like in practice?
That directness can just look like, I'm enjoying our connection so much, and I think I'd like more of it. Like, do you have space for more? Or actually recently, and I guess there's like an intimacy aspect where like you have already kind of established some connection and intimacy with a person, and so there's some level of trust involved, or at least of familiarity. Trust is a word that I'm kind of moving away from recently, but we probably won't have time for that one. and so then, yeah, recently I asked a friend, would you like more, would you like more Alex in your life? Right. And so, and they were kind of like, well, what do you mean?
Nice.
But it was it was a light conversation. And I just said, I've always really enjoyed our connection. And, every time we are together, it feels really good. And so I'm just open to having more of that, and I don't know what that looks like with your life, and then you can just talk about it. And
Great, wonderful. That's it. You just make the non-explicit explicit, and it doesn't have to be uncomfortable at all. And it can be delivered in a way that leaves a lot of gracious spaciousness for a gentle refusal as well. It's like, hey, if there's not more room, that's cool. Like even if you want less, maybe we can name that. I'm naming my desire for perhaps like an exploration of a different kind of connection or an increasing connection with you. How would that be? And there's a way to have that conversation that's comfortable. And it's really great. I'm really happy for you that you're leaning into that more. That's so nourishing. I think it feels like sort of the macro version of the micro of the dance floor, which is like, oh, what is my impulse here towards this person? Do I want to lean in? How do I navigate that? How do I check in that the other person is like wanting to calibrate in a new way as well? And yeah, wonderful.
Yeah. And that point about giving space for the no, or for the boundaries. So we can't finish this without talking about boundaries, because that's like this super rich space that I'm exploring, getting into very deep exploration of right now, as I'm wanting to expand love in my life, and friendship love, and sexual love, and so boundaries, healthy boundaries, clear boundaries are so important. And so anyway, on the friendship side, I'm reminded of a conversation that I had maybe about a year ago with one of my friend Levin, and I kind of had a similar conversation with him as the one that I just described. Like I'd like to have more connection with you. And so there were a couple of things that came out in that conversation. Like, one was we explored why we weren't having more connection. Right. Why were we having kind of like limited connection? And my kind of projection was that maybe he didn't have time for the connection, or I also kind of pedestalized him. I sort of put him on a pedestal, and so there was a part of me that also felt kind of inferior to him, and so that made me more shy to reach out. And so then it turned out that his experience was that he felt like he was the one who more often reached out, and so he felt like there was a lack of reciprocity on my part, to do the reaching out. And it turned out that it was, kind of like this insecurity and projection, pedestalizing that I was doing. And then also, like, in the end, there was, the deep appreciation and brotherly love between us, and a desire for rich connection, and also boundaries. Because he was honest about the fullness of his life at that time, and so one of the things that he did was to invite me into like a group conversation space that he's been developing online. That where it's like a group, online kind of connection and support community. So that was, one of the ways that he was able to say, okay, this would feel good to plug you in here and also be like a graceful way, within what's happening in my life to have more connection for us. And so, yeah.
Great. Well, that's a really nice little case study in so many different phenomenon there. Yeah, like wanting more connection, having the conversation with the person that in a way that allows each party to both understand themselves and each other much more, so that then things can be unlocked and a new way of being can be negotiated and collaborated on. Yeah, fantastic, man. Yeah, that's great to hear. And like we can have these conversations with everyone in our life, actually, because it's useful to just check in. Are we currently in relationship in the way that we want to be? Every relationship has a different dynamic and a different flavor and undulates over time. And it's like, well, what do I want with this individual person right now? And what do they want with me? And what would be the sweet spot? And can we have a conversation about that? And obviously those conversations take a fair bit of time and effort, and we can't have them with everyone all the time, but they're useful to be having with like somebody in your life quite a lot of the time. And yeah, so really, really grateful that you speak towards that mechanism of
and
enhancing.
That's where I'm so also grateful for you introducing me to some of these authentic relating tools that I think you and Johnson touched on in one of the prior conversations, but like where it's like very intentional, diving into the relationship, diving into the present experience of the relationship. And so I love all the tools that you've been exploring and also then sharing with others. It's really dynamic and important. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for joining in that process with me as well. And if anyone watching this is interested in knowing more about those specific activities and tools, there's a bunch in episode 1 of my podcast with Johnson Share. And then in episode 3 with Carl Steyart, we talk about a bunch of models and frameworks for how to navigate living in community with each other. And so both those sort of tool sets are, for me, have been really, really life enhancing. Noticing we're probably coming up to or past time now, I wanted to wrap up what I've been trying to do on each episode is see if there's like a very concise something that feels like it summarizes the essence of what we've touched on. And it could be a word or a single sentence or an image or even a physical action. Or anything at all, or it could just be an idea. I wonder what feels like.
That just makes me want to give you a hug. So.
Right on. Thanks, brother. Is there, in terms of everything we've expressed in this episode, is there something that feels like the heart and the crux of what we've shared today?
Let's see. Let me see if I can. I don't know whether to dive in up here or dive in here. Let's see.
Yeah. How about diving in? Yeah, diving in wherever you feel. Actually, yeah.
I guess something like presence and flow. And I had a little nervousness about doing this as kind of a non-expert in anything. I'm not an expert in anything, and so here I am on a podcast and sharing kind of personal things, and so I guess I decided just to kind of trust in just trying to be present and flow with the conversation. And I guess that's ultimately what leads me to, most of my best experiences and relationships, and it's just as much as possible being present in the moment, and flowing with it. So
great.
How about for you?
Yeah. Well, first I want to push back on that I'm not an expert on anything. I think, like, one of the reasons I invited you on here is because I see you as, like, one of the most adept people I know at cultivating nourishing connection. And so there might not be like a PhD in cultivating nourishing connection, but like you're pretty damn good at it. Actually, maybe there is someone. I'm the doctor of nourishing connection. I think. Did you say like flow and embodiment or something like that at the start of your answer? And
I think I used presence, but I like, embodiment's awesome. That's a whole other conversation.
And so I think what I notice is a lot of what you've spoken to today is like noticing our experience in a way that isn't in the analytical mind. And that brings me into my body in this moment. And I feel, I'm just like going inwards and noticing what's going on in my body. And I want to invite people who have not done much of that, or people who have done a lot of that, if anyone's watching at this point still, just take a minute to notice what it's like to be you right now. Like, close your eyes, just like take a breath at whatever pace feels right, and notice what's the strongest feeling in your body right now, and just notice that feeling. What's it like? And what's it like? I mean, what's the temperature? Is it buzzing? Is it undulating? What are those undulations like? Is it expanding or contracting? What's going on with that feeling? And as you notice that, what else is there? What flavor of emotion is there? Can you notice that? Is there a desire for something? Is there a need for anything? And I think just an invitation to everyone to do that right now, because that is a core practice of getting out of our head and into a different kind of intuition that can be really incredibly valuable. And I think it's a lot of what it underlies a lot of what we've spoken to today. So that's my my kind of attempt at a summary.
Beautiful.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Been awesome. I missed that apartment. Alex rented me his apartment while he went away, and I'm not in it anymore. So I'm in this beautiful room in France. So,
well, now you're in a whole community. So I'm envious in a very happy for you way about your community living. So
thanks. Yeah, I've been in this big community house in France. There's about 12 of us here now. I'm leaving on Monday to visit my uncle and aunt, and then I'll come back for a week, and then I'm going to leave France. So I'll be getting to the UK for a couple of weeks, and then back to Asia. Probably going to go to Bali for like quite a few months. Yeah.
You can't go wrong with Bali.
Can't go wrong. That's right. Alrighty, Alex, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed that. Looking forward to talking again soon. I really appreciate you.
All right, thanks, Simmo. All right, talk to you soon.